Sorry. Sorry about this. Right. Is the meeting is going to be webcast. So start the webcast, please.
We've started.
Thank you. Welcome, members, to the Epping Forest Local Council's Liaison Committee. As you all know, this is an extra meeting because a lot of councillors and members requested to have some kind of presentation and some answers to their questions about Qualis. So I have to say, and they didn't want to wait until March, which is our next meeting. So I have to actually thank the officers, because after negotiation and a conversation with them, we managed to arrange this special meeting where we have Qualis representatives to do a presentation and to answer some of your questions. So we'll go for the webcast introduction. So I'll ask Rebecca Perrin to actually take that on, please, for us.
Okay, the Chairman would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet or filmed and will be capable of repeated viewing or another use by such third parties. Therefore, by participating in this virtual meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. If there's anybody who does not wish to have their image captured, they should ensure that their video setting throughout the virtual meeting is turned off and set to audio only. In the event that technical difficulties interrupt the virtual meeting that cannot be overcome, the Chairman may need to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you very much. Item 2, apologies for absence.
We have apologies from County Councillors McEwen Mahindra, and we also have apologies from Buckhurst Hill Parish Council, Chigwell, Epping Upland, Nazing, Northfield from the Clark, Roydon, Stapleford Abbots, and Waltham Abbey.
Thank you. Councillor Sartin.
Hi, evening.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies from Councillor Brian Rolfe. He's having IT problems today.
Thank you very much. Item 3.
Chairman.
Pardon, yes.
Councillor Morgan, could I just add to the apologies? Apologies from Shearing Parish Council and also Matching Parish Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay. Item 3, minutes of previous meeting. Members, can we agree the minutes of the meeting of the 7th of September 2020 as a true reflection of that meeting? Are we all happy?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. Right. Item 4, and this is our only item, and very interesting should be, it's Qualis presentation. We have Sasa Jevons, which is the Managing Director of Qualis, and her team. And I would like to pass it to Sasa to introduce herself and to her team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Some of you know me. I'm Sasha Jevons, Managing Director of Qualis. What I suggest is I'm just going to introduce the Qualis team and board members. So if I just do that first and go to each person, starting with Paul. Paul, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, good evening. Paul Hewitt, Group Operations Director for Qualis.
And Chris.
Good evening, everybody. Chris Ives, Interim Managing Director of Qualis Commercial.
Thank you, Ben.
So I'm Ben Johnson. I'm the Managing Director of Qualis Management.
Nick.
I'm Nick Dorr. I'm the Finance Director of the Qualis Group.
Anne-Marie.
Do the communications and resident consultation with Qualis.
Thank you. And our board members, Farouk.
Good evening, everyone. Farouk Mohammed, and I'm independent board member.
Councillor Bassett.
Hi, I'm Richard Bassett. I'm one of the district councillors and got asked to represent the council on the board.
Thank you. And Councillor Kaufmann.
Good evening, Howard Kaufman. I'm a district councillor and sit on the board of Qualis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I ask Rebecca to pull up the presentation, because we're going to go through a presentation to start with and then into a question and answer session. And as I understand it, we've got about an hour. So probably the first session will be about 20-25 minutes for the presentation. Rebecca, are you okay to move to the first slide, please? Thank you. So for the agenda tonight, we're going to start actually with one of our board members who's just introduced themselves, Farouk Mohammed. And Farouk has got a background of working with other council-owned companies of a similar nature and is part of a network of companies. So what we'd like to do to start with is just hear a little bit from Farouk, who'll set a sort of national context about how council-owned companies work. And then we'll go into Qualis, the actual purpose and structure of Qualis, and then finally we'll go into the subsidiaries. So this is really very much about information of the activities that the different companies within the group structure undertake, so that we can understand a little bit more detail about what operations Qualis and its subsidiaries are doing, and then into a Q&A. And my suggestion is, if that's okay with the chair, that we run through the presentation in its entirety and then save up the Q&A towards the end, and I'll help fill the questions. We've got the whole team here because obviously the team are responsible for different activities, so I'll be happy to fill the questions at the end. So if it's okay, we're going to start off with Farouk, and I'm just going to hand over to Farouk now. Thanks.
Please proceed. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Sasha. Good evening, everyone. Again, it's a pleasure to be attending my first liaison committee meeting. So as Sasha has already said, she invited me to be part of the meeting and just try and share a national context in terms of my background and my day job, if you will. So I work as a management consultant, and over the past couple of years I've been doing quite a bit of work with other local authorities and LATCOs, which is an acronym that describes these trading companies. LATCOs stands for Local Authority Trading Companies. So I'm going to use that acronym because it's easier than the full mouthful. And just through that experience, I've seen organisations that are at the beginning of the journey, such as Epping Forest with Qualis, and equally organisations that are quite a few years down the line. So just a little bit of historical context first, and forgive me if people already know this, but over the past few years, we've seen local authorities come under increasing pressure with austerity measures and pressure to deliver more, do more with less. As well as that, what we've also seen is a decline in popularity of outsourcing of services, and that's largely due to a whole range of things, including inflexible contracts, poor contract management, and we've even seen some very high profile failures. And what that has led to, and not necessarily this particular piece of legislation, but the 2011 Localism Act. And what the 2011 Localism Act did was it gave local authorities new powers that they didn't have before to trade. And ordinarily you wouldn't put those two sentiments in the same sentence, local authorities and trading. And what that has resulted in is lots of local authority wholly owned new companies being created up and down the country to deliver a number of benefits. And I think if I try and relate it to the Epping Forest context, touching on some of the things that I've already said, for example, outsourcing, where when you outsource a contract to a commercial organisation and you are paying them for their services, the profit that they would make would ultimately go into shareholders' pockets. But the key difference, the big difference with LATCOs, local authority trading companies, is that they are wholly owned by the local authority. There is one single shareholder, and that is the local authority. So any investment within that particular entity, within your local LATCO, and in your case, Qualis, it means that the Epping Forest pound stays within Epping Forest. It doesn't actually go out anywhere, and that is a huge benefit in terms of lots of local authorities up and down the country setting up trading companies. The other key benefit, and I've already touched on the word trading, is whereas local authorities ordinarily are not allowed to trade, with these new powers under the 2011 Localism Act, with local authority trading companies, LATCOs, those companies are independent, even though they are wholly owned by the local authority, and they are actually allowed to generate a profit or a surplus. And what that basically means is that any profits that are generated by a LATCO go back to the council. They do not go to the directors that sit on the board or any other shareholders. There is only one shareholder, and it actually goes back to the council, which in itself helps the council to deliver other key services, and also has an indirect benefit in terms of the cost of those services being delivered by the local authority, and in terms of the council tax bills being kept at the absolute minimum. There are other benefits that come with LATCOs, and there's far too many for me to kind of list in this presentation. But I would say that LATCOs are able to be more commercial. They also have the opportunity to win work and deliver services elsewhere, although their primary focus has to be their own local authority and delivering services back to their own local authority and their own service users within borough. Another key benefit is, and I've already touched on this, is the investment and the opportunity that a LATCO creates within the borough for local communities. That could be in terms of training, that could be in terms of employment, that could be in terms of development. Other benefits, as I've already touched on, with a LATCO, the local authority has direct control over what the LATCO actually does. So all in all, there are a number of benefits that come with local authority trading companies that don't necessarily exist if you are outsourcing the services or looking to deliver the services as a local authority. As I've already said, these new powers aren't so new anymore. They came about as a consequence of the 2011 Localism Act. And today there are over 1,000 LATCOs like Qualis up and down the country, some of which have been trading for many years. And in some cases, they're turning over tens of millions of pounds, including delivering profits and surpluses back to their local authority, which then benefits the local area, and in terms of some of those challenges that the local authority has by way of austerity and being expected to deliver more with less. So I hope that's given you a little bit of context in terms of the kind of services that LATCOs are delivering up and down the country. I'm not going to touch on some of the things that are going to be covered off by the executive in the presentation. But the services that are being delivered by LATCOs up and down the country are very wide ranging, from waste management to delivering new homes to providing social care. at an individual level. And that's just a few examples. The portfolio is as diverse as it's wide. So I hope that's given you a little bit of national context and a little bit of an overview. In my mind, Qualis is a fantastic opportunity for Epping Forest and all those that live and work within Epping Forest. And I'm very excited to be on the board and to be at the beginning of this journey. And I personally believe that Qualis is going to deliver a lot of value for local people. So I'm going to stop there and hand back to you, Sasha.
Thank you very much, Farouk. What we'll do now is I'll take you through how that works in terms of Epping Forest District Council and Qualis. So next slide, please, Rebecca. Okay. Sorry, I'm just going to minimise. So in terms of Qualis, we actually set up in February 2020. So we've been working really hard last year on putting in place all the operational structures and governance that sit around Qualis and its group of companies. And as part of that work, we completed the permanent recruitment of the Qualis board. And you have some of our board members have introduced themselves this evening that are here tonight. We've also now permanently recruited the leadership team, and I've introduced you to the leadership team as well, and we'll hear more from them later. We went live with Qualis Management, as you know, which delivers the repairs service on the 28th of September. And we continue to do a lot of work around the development and also the setup and governance of the company. So it's some really hard work and really exciting projects. So in terms of Qualis objectives, just to build on what Farouk said, so one of them, and one of the really important ones, and you will have been part of hearing about these, is to bring forward development of key sites that the council owns and to deliver new homes and amenities in the district. And by way of example, we have, at the moment, we have 5 sites on Epping High Street, which I'm sure you will have heard about, and we'll talk about those a little bit later. So that's an example of the type of development work that Qualis Commercial is undertaking. Qualis aims to act commercially to deliver sustainable returns to the council. And this really builds on what Farouk said. It is about being commercial in the development space to make sure that we can deliver returns back to the council that can be used to support the services from the council. It's really about delivering long-term value across all our activities, and in doing so, positively impact the communities, the environment, and the economy. We want to create better places for people to live, more jobs, communities that are sustainable. So that's really fundamental to the objectives of Qualis in all of the work that we do. And building a highly effective team and creating a corporate culture. This is very important that we have the right skills and experience within Qualis and Qualis teams. Development in particular is a highly skilled area. We need to make sure that Qualis is able to attract and retain the right experience to deliver these type of activities and to do it well. So can I just ask Rebecca to move on to the next slide, please? Thank you. So just in terms of Qualis structure, Epping Forest District Council, you can see on the left there, they are the sole shareholder, so 100% ownership of Qualis and the group of companies. Going over into that structure chart, Qualis Group is effectively the parent company, and that sits above the subsidiary companies. There are 4 subsidiary companies. Qualis Living, the first one there on the left, this is effectively the investment company. So when Qualis Commercial, which is a developer, builds out, for example, new homes on one of the Epping sites, those homes, if they're for private market rent, will then sit within Qualis Living, the investment company, and hopefully return a long-term profit and surplus that goes back up through into the council, Epping Forest District Council as a shareholder. Qualis Commercial is the development company, so that is where, as I mentioned earlier, the expertise sit in terms of developing and building the developments. And then Qualis Management is the management company where we're undertaking the delivery of services. So, for example, we are delivering the repairs service to our council tenants across the district. And Qualis Community is the fourth subsidiary, and we're in the process still of setting that up. And that's really about a community interest company delivering community benefits. So by way of example, that could be something like an employment and apprenticeship scheme, job creation type of activity, or the management of public realm spaces. I'm going to allow Paul Hewitt is going to go into more detail about each particular subsidiary. But I just wanted to give you that sort of structure chart so you can see how it links back to the council. Next slide, please. Thank you. I wanted to talk a little bit here about governance and the funding of Qualis. So you can see in this circle, the shareholder agreement is the really important document. This is the way in which the council oversees the management and the activities of Qualis Group and its companies. And the shareholder agreement is that contract between the council and Qualis, and it sets out the parameters within which the activities can be undertaken and who has responsibility. It also sets out how Qualis reports back to the council on its performance of its activities. So it really does set the scene for how the council can monitor and make sure that it's delivering what it's set out to deliver, and create that transparency between the group of companies back to the council. So by way of example, the shareholder agreement sets out very clearly that they must agree the business plan with Qualis and its subsidiary companies. That business plan is then the document that allows Qualis to have the autonomy to deliver those activities within the business plan and not outside of that. So if it was trying to do activities outside of that agreed business plan with the shareholder, it would need to go back to the shareholder and get approval for that. So that's an important document that sets that governance structure. So if you look at the green arrow, the business plan is agreed with Qualis. That sets out, in this instance, we've got a one-year plan at the moment, and we're about to move into agreeing a 4-year business plan. That sets out the objectives and activities of the companies going forward. The council then lend money into Qualis. Qualis then use that money to invest, develop. So, for instance, the money on the construction loan to build the homes and also manage the homes. That in time generates a profit and surplus, and that goes back to the shareholder, which is the council, in the form of a loan margin on the funding or a dividend in terms of profit. So you can sort of see it is a circular flow round of activity. I'm going to stop there, but probably later you may have questions on this, and we're very happy to answer a little bit more detail. But I wanted to give you a sort of high-level overview of how Qualis is structured, governed, and funded. Just to add, in terms of monitoring, Qualis provide quarterly monitoring information back to the council, and that goes through cabinet and full council. And the shareholder has a representative from the council's Section 151 officer, which is Andrew Small in the council's case, who oversees the activities and the performance on behalf of the council. So there's quite a formal structure in the way in which Qualis has to report its performance back to the council, and that's overseen through those committee structures. I'm going to pause there. I'm going to hand over to Paul Hewitt, who's going to take you through a lot more detail in terms of the activities of each subsidiary company. Thank you.
Thanks, Sasha.
Rebecca, if you could move on to the next slide, please. Thanks.
Okay, so starting with Qualis Management, which, as Sasha mentioned, is our facilities management company. It took over the repair service from EFDC for over 6,000 homes towards the end of last year, and we've already seen high customer satisfaction and increased productivity. All of this is supported by new technology. So the future for Qualis Management includes the transfer of additional services from the council, the progression of some sustainability initiatives, including our commitment to a ultra low emission fleet, the development of our offer to provide management and facilities management services both within the group and out in the market to third parties. Next slide, please, Rebecca. So Qualis Commercial is our development management company. We are committed to deliver, subject to site transfer and planning permission, a number of key schemes within the district. Back in December, we submitted planning applications for the Leisure Centre and multi-storey car park on Bakers Lane and Cottage Lane sites, respectively. And we are finalising our submission for St John's, Hemnall and Condor, all residential schemes that will deliver over 250 new homes. So the future for Qualis Commercial, we will shortly submit our business case for 2 additional residential schemes within the district. We hope to be involved with the North Weald project, which clearly has enormous potential. We are working with the shareholder to identify development opportunities within the existing portfolio. And we intend to offer development management services out into the market to third parties again. Next slide, please, Rebecca. So Qualis Living is the investment company. It will own and manage some of the completed developments that are handed over by Qualis Commercial. It is also building a diverse property portfolio that will provide long-term and secure income to the group. And we completed the first 2 purchases towards the end of last year, and details are provided on the right-hand side of this slide. Looking forward, it will look to acquire additional sites for our development pipeline from the shareholder and from the market. It will look to acquire additional income investments, looking at a range of asset types, both in and out of district. And it will develop its own property asset management service, again, to offer to third parties to increase income to the group, which ultimately benefits the shareholder. Next slide, please, Rebecca. Okay, so lastly, Qualis Community is our community interest company. So I'm quite excited about this one because it really does embrace the core values of Qualis and indeed the shareholder. It will have social purpose, so it will support infrastructure and services, and all profits will be directly reinvested back into the community. We have recently formed a partnership with regeneration specialist Primera, and this is a remarkable organisation. It's led by Ruth Dunstan, OBE, and they will provide some very crucial support to us with the setup of this company. And I'm pleased that we've managed to agree a 3-month programme to launch, which is quite ambitious, but it's definitely achievable. So the future for Qualis Community, really, after the setup phase, we will establish independent steering groups with strong community representation, and that will include town and parish council members. We will positively engage with the public through a series of interviews and workshops to agree our strategy and focus. And we will invite applications from the community and agree our support for the initial projects within the company. Okay, thank you.
Hi, okay, I think that's the end of the presentation. We're into questions and answers. We've got half an hour. I'm happy then, we can go into more detail as we take questions. Thank you.
If I can actually intervene here, is it possible to lose the screen so I can actually have a good look at, right. So the people who actually are quite easy and they know how to put the yellow hand up, I can actually look at and find out. The people who cannot do that, if they can actually raise their hand manually, and I will endeavor to spot you. If not, Vivian will actually help me there. So I have noticed that Councillor Sheila Jackman had actually her hand up. So
it's very kind, Chairman. Thank you very much. I would ask your indulgence because I've got 3 questions here. All of them are rather important, perhaps to be answered by different members of Qualis. Qualis appears to be responsible for services and projects, and as has been explained, that before Qualis existed would have been quite adequately managed by the council. And I'm referring to housing repairs and maintenance that was transferred from the council, and projects such as the new Waltham Abbey Leisure Centre, which was a council scheme. So why does Qualis not hold its meetings in public or publish agendas and reports, as the council does for all its meetings and has done for any major developments in the past? That's number 1. Number 2, it came as a surprise to me that the leader of the council is not on the Qualis board. When does he discover what Qualis is proposing? Which Surrey office block is the latest to be bought by Qualis, perhaps? Surely the leader, and I would have thought the cabinet as a whole, should know what Qualis is spending its money on before a report or business plan is presented to the council or cabinet. And lastly, on the issue of the Qualis board salaries, it is in the public domain that the Qualis board chairman, and I would like to say in connection with this, we don't know who the chairman is, we've never seen him, we don't know anything about him. And it would be nice to have a bit more transparency on this. But it is said, but it is in the open that he is receiving up to 77,000 a year, 1,000 a day based on 1 day's work a week, plus up to a maximum of an additional 25 days a year. In addition, some of the Qualis board positions are held by district council officers who are here this evening. And is this in addition to their EFDC salaries? Have the EFDC salaries been reduced to reflect that there are only 5 working days in a week? And one of those is now apparently dedicated to Qualis. And if your members could address those questions, I'd be very grateful. Thank you.
I've made a note of those, so I'll work my way through those questions. The first one, services, repairs and maintenance. So that's transferred over into Qualis, and actually what we have done, I think members may recall that the council was in contract with Mears, which came to an end. So there was no further opportunity to operate that model. So you would have had to go out to tender or in this instance, transfer it into Qualis, which was the decision that was made at the time. So in terms of efficiency, what Qualis can do, rather than contracting it out to the private sector, is for the council to still have control over its company, invest in the technology that was not there previously through the Mears contract or through the council. So, for instance, we put in a new IT system that will increase the productivity and hopefully increase the quality as well. So there are some significant benefits in terms of what the council can achieve through that investment through Qualis.
My question was, why aren't you more transparent in your meetings? The people in Epping want to know what you're talking about. They want transparency from you, the same as we used to have from the district, and we're not getting it.
That's absolutely fine. I was coming on to that point, actually. So what I was leading on to is that we can absolutely attend. The council has various forums on the housing management side, but it works with residents, and Qualis can attend those meetings, and we're happy to be open and transparent about the service, create channels of feedback with our customers, and understand those issues that you're talking about. So that can continue to happen via the council's housing management system. We went live in September, and I think that is a good point, that if you feel that isn't happening, then we can make that connection through the housing department, and I think that's important. Yeah.
If you could follow that up, because people in Epping are getting very angry that they're not knowing what's going on. And I think they need to know, and you need to tell them.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. And I will work with the Director of Housing on the council side, how we can help come along to some of those forums and meetings and residents associations. I think that would be helpful. We'll keep that into a formal structure. So that's good feedback. Thank you. In terms of the leader not on the council board, that was your second question. I mean, I don't know if the leader's here, but when we went through the advice that we got on the governance and the structure and the setup, it was appropriate to keep a separation between the council and the leader and the council-owned companies. And really, the shareholder agreement that I explained earlier is the document and the framework that sets out how the council has that visibility and control over Qualis, while still allowing the council-owned companies some flexibility to manage activities to deliver the outputs agreed with the council in the business plan. So that's kind of how that works. And it's generally speaking, I mean, Farouk may be able to come in here, but it's not often a model that you see in other council companies where the leader would be on the council-owned company. The third question was about board salaries, I believe. So I appreciate your comments on the board salaries, and I believe the February cabinet meeting set out what you explained about those salaries. We did go through a process of benchmarking them, and that was generally the advice that we got from our external consultants on a reasonable level. But I hear your point on that.
Right, we continue. Councillor Pond.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, Paul mentioned the bringing forward of additional development sites. Could he be a bit more explicit and say which they are? And the other point I wanted to make was really taking up one made by Councillor Jackman, which is the issue of transparency. I mean, I am a district councillor and a town councillor. I'm fairly well aware of what's going on with Qualis, and I know about the structure, and I can see the financial model. But I think there is a job to be done in explaining this rather difficult setup in words of one syllable to the public, because I'm sure Sheila Jackman is right when she says that Joe out there hearing at Qualis, seeing the hoardings in Epping, seeing the vans buzzing around, hasn't the faintest idea of all this and doesn't really know that it's anything much to do with the council. So I think there is an explanation needed for the public and for our constituents.
Thank you. And I take on board that comment. We are working on our publicity information. Qualis has a website. We are about to publish the one-year business plan on that website, which hopefully will be in an understandable format of what I've just explained about the company, how it operates and its structures. But I think it's a constant process of us making sure that we do communicate the right information in the right way to residents, and we'll keep working on that. So thank you for that, Councillor Pond. The second question was about development sites being brought forward. I'm just going to refer to Paul now to answer that question. Thank you.
So obviously one of our objectives is to build a pipeline of developments, both within the district, and certainly that's going to be the focus. So what we will be doing is really working with the shareholders, so EFDC, to identify opportunities within the portfolio. And obviously there's a significant amount of work involved in doing that. And as soon as we have any additional information and certainly approvals, both from our board and from shareholder and cabinet, we will naturally share any information that we can about those schemes.
Okay, we continue. Before I continue to Councillor Whitehouse, can I just say, Councillor Terry Blanks, I know that you want to speak, so I've got you on my list. Okay, thank you. Councillor Whitehouse, please.
Thank you, Chairman. When housing repairs was run by the council, changes and issues about housing repairs used to come to scrutiny committee, and councillors used to take up concerns that tenants had raised with us. Presumably, the issues won't be coming to scrutiny committee anymore. But how do we take up tenants' concerns with Qualis? Do we still can we still do that? Because if more and more services are going to transfer over to Qualis, it's going to be, what will our role be in representing our tenants, our residents?
Absolutely, you can, and we want to have a strong and open dialogue with you. I'm going to ask Ben Johnson just to answer that question in a bit more detail on how it works.
Yeah, so we do ask councillors to go through these hello@qualismanagement.co.uk with any sort of concerns. What we will do then is make sure that those then get filtered through to the appropriate place to be dealt with. Obviously, we have a strong link with the council as well there in terms of the services. So we will then join up with any sort of complaints around repairs on that. So we ask that you use that sort of protocol for logging anything with us.
Sorry, Chairman, can I just ask for that to be repeated, because I haven't come across that before. I don't know if other members have. The Qualis at hello@Qualis.
Yeah, hello@qualismanagement.co.uk.
Thank you.
What we'll do as well is we'll circulate that in an all-member brief bulletin if that's helpful, and make sure that's communicated more widely. I would just add as well to that there is monitoring through the select committee process of Qualis, and so where you do have issues that you want to raise about repairs or the service, that can filter through the select committee process as well.
Okay, Councillor Hipp.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just a couple of questions. Firstly, I don't think Councillor Jackman's question was answered about the salaries. Could we have an example of any LATCO that has actually returned dividends? Because Brick by Brick in Croydon has failed and is now being investigated by the government, I believe. South Essex Homes has not returned anything yet. And the way the companies are set up, there seems to be a huge potential for lots of internal revenue return rather than actually generating profit. So who decides what's a proper dividend and how is that returned to the council? Who decides?
Can I ask Farouk maybe if you can answer that, and if not, it may be that we come back to you, Councillor Heath, on the first question. But I don't know, Farouk, maybe you can give some context on other.
Yeah, I can certainly provide some context. So in my experience with certainly the LATCOs that I've dealt with and local authorities, that information isn't necessarily in the public domain, and certainly I've not been privy to the level of return that's been returned back to the shareholder. I can say that there's many LATCOs that wouldn't be continuing to grow and go from strength to strength if they weren't actually delivering sustainable returns back to their shareholder. Your other question was in terms of who decides on the level of dividend that's returned back to the shareholder. And again, from experience, that is something that is decided between the shareholder and the LATCO. The LATCO is a commercial business. It does need investment to continue growing and developing. So that is a determining factor in terms of the level of return that goes back to the shareholder. If you don't invest within your own wholly owned company, then it's not going to be able to develop and operate in that commercial, competitive, innovative way that it needs to continue delivering the returns back to the shareholder. Can I
Sorry, it doesn't quite answer the first question about why would a company that is a wholly or a private company, which is Qualis or Brick by Brick or South Essex Homes, why are they not publishing returns? I mean, it must be a public record, isn't it?
I think that is, yeah. I mean, I would expect it is. I mean, I can't give you that detail because it will vary from local from LATCO and from local authority to local authority in terms of what return they're getting back from their LATCO. I would expect that that is something that is agreed on a case-by-case basis. It varies. It's not the same across all local authorities. And I think to your point, in terms of it being in the public domain, I expect that information can be gathered and provided if that was desired.
Example one would be good. Yeah.
I'm just going to, if it's okay, I'm just going to bring in Nick here. Nick.
Yes, it's more obviously in relation to Qualis. So obviously our accounts, including profitability and other issues, actually get registered at Company House, so they're publicly examinable. They're actually shared with the authority as part of the quarterly reviews. And of course, when the business case is also shared with the authority, it will show dividend distribution. So you will actually have a very good grip on the financial behaviour and the returns that are coming from Qualis. The one thing that is less obvious, because it's hidden behind the figures, is the immediate benefit the authority get from providing the loans to Qualis. Now, Sasha mentioned it earlier, but the authority makes a reasonable margin on the loans that are provided to Qualis immediately, long before dividends are earned. And that's commonly between 1.5% and 2% margin, depending on the loan and depending on the cost of the money to the authority. And obviously that did feature in the budget for last year. And I think we all talked about it around this time last year as well.
Councillor Heap, you are okay now? Can I continue? Yes?
Please continue.
Thank you. Right. Before I go to Beverly Ramsey, can I just notify Councillor Lee, I know that you are waiting, so you are in my list. Okay? Thank you very much. So, Beverly Ramsey, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I've just got a question about Qualis community. I think you mentioned that there were some plans to work with town and parish councils in this area. I just wonder at what point town and parish councils have been or will be consulted on this, because I'm not aware. I know certainly at Epping Town Council we've not been consulted about Qualis community, and clearly this company potentially could impact town and parish councils' work quite substantially. So I'd like to know at what point there are going to be discussions in relation to that part of the operations. Thank you.
This is, I'm going to hand over to Paul, but this is the company that we're just starting on in terms of setup. So we won't have spoken to you yet because we're right at the beginning of the process. And I'll just ask Paul to take you through how that will work.
Yes, as Sasha said, the company hasn't actually been created yet, so that's obviously step one. The partnership with Primera is very, very recent, and we have agreed with them a 3-month program basically to get us through the full statutory setup, the governance, and the steps that follow, which will include that full engagement with key stakeholders like yourselves. So it will be quite early in the process, but the first step for us is definitely to sort out the governance and establish the company.
Okay, thank you. As long as the engagement is early, that would be good.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Weeksley, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I've got several questions. Some of them are sort of a bit hypothetical, and the reason that I'm going to ask those is that I hope they'll give a clear indication of the type of company that Qualis is. And but my first question is on the borrowing factor. The councillors lent money to Qualis, and this in turn has been borrowed from the Public Works Loan Board, as I understand it. But I remember at a previous meeting, Mr. Dorr said that Qualis could actually borrow money from elsewhere. And I'm just wondering what would happen if Qualis got into financial difficulties, couldn't repay the loans, particularly if a loan was not from the council but from another body, would the council have to guarantee that loan in particular? And or would it just be down to Qualis as a company in itself? That was my first question. The second question is again a bit hypothetical, but it was an issue raised by another councillor at another meeting some time ago as to what would happen to Qualis if the organisation or reorganisation of local government took place. And in fact, the FDC was abolished and went into a unitary authority. So the possibility would exist, I think, that Qualis could then join up with other similar companies that other councils have formed. But I just wondered if in fact that was to happen, and if also there was a possibility that these other companies wanted additional funding, could in fact Qualis be sold off just as an ordinary company might be, and whatever money was raised from that could be invested in this new company? I realise that's very hypothetical questions, but I think they might give some sort of indication as to what sort of company Qualis is. That was my second question. I've got another couple, if I may ask them. And the other one, I think, was something which Councillor Heap has already mentioned, and Farouk mentioned in his presentation that there are 1,000, I think, similar companies to Qualis. And I just wondered if you could point the way to any outstanding examples where these companies have been very successful or are very successful, and alternatively, if there are those which have sort of failed miserably. I think it would be useful to know that. And my fourth point actually concerns staff, which I think is quite important. And when staff were tupied over, I'm interested about the industrial relations side of it, and are trade unions still involved in representing those members of staff? Thank you.
Can I take them in reverse, if that's okay? And I'll just take the one on the staff and the TUPE. So when we did the TUPE transfer of staff into Qualis management, there was full engagement with the unions around that, and the staff consultation process picked up there and talked through their terms and conditions as they move over into Qualis, which are all protected under TUPE. So a full process was taken place. On the successful and unsuccessful other local authority councils, may I just suggest, Chair, if it's okay, we come back on that, because rather than putting Farouk on the spot, I think it would be better that we give you a written reply on that. I'm going to go to question 1, which was about the money lent into Qualis borrowed from PWLB, and if I could ask Nick Daw to answer that question. Thank you.
So to clarify, the authority in the main has borrowed from PWLB to provide loans to Qualis, but it's also used some of its own cash balances because, as you know, at the moment they would earn very, very little interest if placed in the banking institutions or elsewhere. So that is the source of main funding. In the shareholder agreement, Qualis is allowed to approach other lenders for funds, but it can only do so having notified the authority and having given the authority the first chance to provide the funds at a competitive market rate. Also, if Qualis raises funds and loans from elsewhere, those loans will be securitized against particular asset purchases or particular things, which would not be the responsibility of the authority. It's worth saying that the authority has built in a high degree of securitization of its loans in the loan agreements against the assets that are purchased, the concrete that is poured, the steel that is brought, even the funds that are held in the bank account. So it's heavily securitized. In terms of their responsibility, actually the companies in Qualis are limited companies. So there is no ongoing liability that falls back to the shareholders. The issue is more about the securitization of loans. So hopefully that answers the majority of the financial questions, but forgive me if I haven't got them all.
I think that covers it. So the final question is around what happens to Qualis if local government reform is. And I would ask Andrew Small to answer that. Just before I go to Andrew, Farouk is actually able to, if you give a few examples on the LATCO. I'll go to Farouk first, thanks, and then Andrew.
Yeah, there's so many examples, Councillor Wixley, and maybe I didn't quite appreciate Councillor Heap's question earlier if he was looking for examples by way of name. But I think that the ones that immediately spring to my mind, if you like, the big players in this space, the Qualis equivalent that have kind of grown to quite significant operations. So one is Norse, N-O-R-S-E, and that is Norfolk County Council's LATCO. Huge operation and commercially expanding beyond their borders and delivering significant services and returns back to the council. Another example I can give you is Suffolk, and they've got a LATCO called Veritas, a very commercially savvy organisation, delivering a very mixed portfolio of services, including the type that we've been talking about for Qualis, but as diverse as, for example, getting into partnership with the co-op chain up and down the country to deliver services for them as well. So being very commercial as well. And I think picking one smaller and closer to home, closer to Epping Forest. So Harlow Council have got a LATCO, HTS Group, and it's one organisation that I know well, and I can tell you that they've been delivering returns back to their council for the last 3 years. I can't give you the figures, but I can definitely tell you that they've been delivering returns. And that LATCO similarly came about when a 10-year partnership with Kia, the construction company, came to an end. It was a JV. And in that instance, Kia were taking 80% off the profit that the contract was generating, the JV contract. The difference now being that through HTS, the council retains all of the profit that they're delivering, and arguably they're delivering a bigger profit.
Oh, he's gone.
I think we lost Farouk, so could we ask Andrew to take over, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And probably I'll just finish off where Farouk left us, unfortunately. As Farouk said, there are thousands of these LATCOs across the country, and the vast majority of them are well managed. In truth, it's just unfortunate that the few that grab the headlines aren't. But the council's got a very strong shareholder agreement in place, invested properly to make sure it's got the right controls in place to ensure that the council's interests are protected with Qualis, and that should give members, I think, of the district council confidence really that they have control over it. And there are arrangements in place to make sure equally that the obligations under that agreement are being managed and monitored. And just finally, sorry, on the point that Councillor Wixley asked about unitary and what happens. Well, in the event of a unitary rearrangement of Essex, then whatever is the new body that's created becomes the shareholder of Qualis. So the interests of Qualis just transfer over to that new organisation. It could be restructured, it could be disbanded, but if it's making profits and surpluses and generating returns for the council, why would it, I would argue. So I think the future of Qualis is safe in that environment.
Yeah, Chairman, can I just come back briefly on that? Chairman, you're muted.
Councillor Wixley, we've got quite a couple of other people, and the time is actually running. So if you could be kind enough and send an email to Andrew or to Sasha, then I'm sure they will actually return an answer. I'm ever so sorry.
Okay.
Before I go to Councillor Lee, I would like to ask Mark Squire. I do know that you are waiting, so you are in the list. Thank you. So, Councillor Lee, please.
Thank you, Chairman. A lot of very interesting questions. I must say, I'm not really a business head or an IT expert, as all of you know. But I'm not 100% for Qualis, but that's just my own opinion. I feel like it's just like another load of chief of Indians or whatever. But where with all the developers, local developers and builders aren't pushed out, and you know, because they're our local people who work and support all of us. But I will say I'm a bit disappointed to find that you bought a new fleet of vans and that yes, they're low emission and they're diesel when they're all being told you've got to go electric. So that I'm quite disappointed on, and I would like to know why you've done that when they're all being told you've got to go electric. Thank you.
I didn't hear all of that, but I think I'm going to refer this to Ben, who should be able to answer it. Ben Johnson, thank you.
Yeah, so the reason we haven't gone for a fully electric fleet is that there's a few reasons. The first is the infrastructure around the district isn't in place yet. So I was having a look the other day, and there's I think about 5 or 6 points scattered around. So in terms of charging, that would be difficult. The second point is that the size of vehicle that we would need to operate the repair service, they don't exist yet. So what there is out there is small sort of commercial vehicles like the Nissan Leaf, but the sort of medium-sized, larger vehicles like the Ford Transit is a good example. The E version of that, the electric version, doesn't actually come out till 2022. So the technology is not there yet. However, having said that, we are actually going to be trialling. We are trialling and have ordered 2 hybrid vehicles, which we're hoping to take receipt of next month. And I truly believe that if we successfully trial those, that's probably the way we would move in terms of the hybrid options. Whilst the sort of infrastructure catches up and the technology catches up, most importantly. The board is very committed to moving in that direction, as was outlined earlier in the presentation. So it's very much on our agenda to contribute to the district's carbon emission reduction target.
Thank you. I'm so sorry, Councillor Blanks. Thank you for your patience. Would you like to ask your question? I'm so sorry about keeping you so long. You're muted. Can you unmute yourself?
That's better.
I'm sorry, we cannot hear you.
Oh, come on.
It's still muted, I think.
You're still muted.
Is that better now?
Yes, thank you.
Jolly good, thank you. I was very pleased to hear Sasha's commitment to openness and transparency, because I asked Epping Forest District Council why they bought 24 new diesel vans at Christmas when they stated they were committed to electric. Unfortunately, Epping Forest District Council themselves refused to answer because they said it was an operational decision by Qualis. Is that so? Is it just an operational decision by Qualis?
In terms of how the fleet are managed and operated, yes, that's part of the responsibility of Qualis management and the service that we provide. I think hopefully Ben Johnson this evening has explained the process that we're going through in terms of the fleet and the challenges that we have, but our aspiration to move towards electric vehicles. But yes, in terms of the operational management of Qualis management, that is part of the service, and that's their responsibility to make sure it's delivered in the right way, including the fleet management.
Mm. Yes, thank you for that.
Okay. Mark Squire.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just a very quick point. We're talking about reaching out to the public who don't really understand what's happening with Qualis. And in terms of educating, reassuring and transparency, wouldn't it be a good idea if Qualis had a page on the FDC website explaining some of these objectives, and so that there's a presence of understanding of generally what Qualis is about and what Qualis is doing?
Thank you. I think that's really good feedback. Obviously, Qualis have their website, and I believe there is a link, although I will refer to Andrew Small if to make sure that information is clear through the Epping Forest website. And I think it's really good to hear your views tonight, and we need to continue to work on providing as much information out there to as many groups in a format that you think is appropriate and understandable. So we will continuously work on that. Thank you for your comments, and we'll pick up with the council on their website.
Well, that concludes the questions. Thank you very much, the team from Qualis that came here to do the presentation and answer your questions, our questions, and of course all the members that ask questions. And I'm sure there will be much more to go forward in the future. Maybe Qualis will do other presentations to other committees, and they will have a lot of more information for us for transparency. Well, thank you very much, everyone. We're going to any other business, item 5, and no other business? No, thank you. Item 6, dates for future meeting. Of course, please note that the next meeting is the original one, will be held on the 15th of March 2021 at 7 p.m. And with that, I wish you a good evening, and I close the meeting at 9 minutes past 8. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you,
Good
Chair.
night.
Thank you.
Good night. Good night.
Thanks. Good night.
Yeah.